So let's imagine that there is a bookstore out there that wanted us to build sort of a cash register system for their store. They sell books, obviously, and we want to sort of group those books into purchases and then sort of print a kind of receipt for what the person will owe the store once all of the books that they are buying have been rung up. Thinking in terms of object-oriented programming, how do we think about a solution to that problem? Well, first we need to think in terms of objects. What are the pieces of functionality? What are the concepts that we are going to try and solve here in this program? Obviously, we could just have a menu system where they put in a bunch of stuff and we save it in an array and then we print it out, but that's not very flexible. And as we'll see in future videos, if we start off strong in an object-oriented way, it's going to help us out a lot later on if we have to add more functionality to this program. So I think thinking about the concepts here, I can see a couple of very clear ones right off the bat. There are books, right? And books will have, a title, they will have an author, and they will have a price of some sort because we need to ring them up. The receipt needs to be clear enough that they know what it is that they bought, and we need to know how much it cost. Not only that, but we also have this concept of a purchase, that someone could come to us with a number of books. We don't know how many. Could be one, could be 10. And we want to sort of collect them into a purchase that we can print a receipt from, or we can at least describe in text what constitutes that purchase and what the total value is of that purchase. And then, of course, there is some sort of register system that will be creating these objects in order to add books to a purchase, and then finally print out the final total for that purchase. So thinking in those terms, we could imagine that the register is going to sort of rely on the purchase. It's also going to rely on the books. This purchase concept relies on there being a book of some sort already made, and the book itself is kind of self-contained in and of itself, right? It doesn't rely on any other part of the system. So when we build this, I want to start at the book level, right? Because it doesn't rely on anything else, and we can create a book with some simple data types, and then the purchase would be next, right? Because once we have the books, we can create a purchase and add books to the purchase. So I'm going to take that avenue as we go forward here and take a look at building this bookstore system. So the first thing I'm going to do, here I am in Eclipse, and I'm going to create a new project. So I'll create a new Java project, and I'm going to call it Bookstore. And I'll use all the defaults. That's fine. We will finish, and here is our Bookstore project. I will right-click on the source folder here, and I'm going to make a new class. For package, obviously I'm building this for a bookstore, so it's going to be com, Narns, and Bulbul, everybody's favorite bookstore. And the class I'm going to create is a book class. It's not going to inherit from anything. I don't need any of these special classes, so we will go with that. And here's our book class. Now, I talked about we need something to sort of describe in the purchase what constitutes this book. So we will have the title, private as always. I'm going to put the author in, and finally what the price is. And for the price, we all know not to use doubles for money. So I will introduce here the big decimal type. Big decimal is an object that will act very much like a number that has decimal places to it, except that it is exact. Unlike double, which can have rounding issues because it is an imprecise value. It's stored more as a fraction than it is an actual decimal place. We will use big decimal here, which will save our value exactly, and when we do the math, it will also calculate precisely. So I have my big decimal. I immediately get an error saying that it doesn't know about the big decimal type, so we can just do a shift control or a shift command on an Apple computer. Shift control O, and it will import it for us. So now from here, we can create our getters and setters. So when we print this receipt, we would like a sort of a nice output of our information from the book. So we're going to add a toString method to make that super easy. And with the toString, I'm going to print out the title, the author's name, and then the price. So that will now print out the title and the author, and then on a new line underneath, it will print the price. I'll actually put a $sign before the price as well, just to make it look extra nice. Now, instead of creating a book and then having to set all these values, I would rather the book be created with all of the information right from the get-go, so I'm going to create a constructor as well. And you'll notice I created the price as a string because I can pass that string to a big decimal and it will create the number for me. This gives me sort of, just making it a string makes it easier to create these objects very quickly instead of creating a whole nother big decimal number before creating a book. And there is my book class. Very simple and straightforward. And now we can look at how to use these books to create a purchase. So I will go back and create a new class again, and it'll be a purchase. Now for purchase, really all I'm going to do here is sort of collect book objects. So you can add book objects to a purchase, and then you can sort of print out what the purchase is and see how much everything cost. So I will start with really just creating a list of books. Again, the Java does not immediately know what these types are, so we'll just do a Shift Control O and pull in all the imports. There are two kinds of lists in the Java Standard Library. One is the util list, one is the AWT list. The AWT list is a graphical interface thing that we don't want to use. We want the standard util list, which is the interface for a list, and that's the one we want to import. So now I'm not going to have anyone set the items array for us, but you can add things to the items array by calling the buy method on purchase. And once you buy a book, it gets added to the list and it gets included in the purchase. And the final thing I'll do here is I'll add a toString method to the purchase in order to sort of print a receipt. So the one thing I want to do, that I know I want to do, is I want to loop through all the books and print them out. Actually get the string for the book and add it to a long list here. So I can do that with a for each loop on the items. And since I have many books that I want to go through, I want to start off a string so that I can, for each call of the for loop, I'm going to keep adding to this string. So I have to create the string outside of the for loop, right? And then inside the for loop, I can add things onto this string. I'll add 2 new lines in order to sort of space out each book entry. Now, I'd also said that I wanted to sort of include a total of what the customer would owe after buying all these books. So that'll be yet another variable I'll do before the for loop. And then inside the for loop, I can get the price for each item, add it to a total. And then after the for loop, I can add that total to the result. So I have another big decimal now, and I started at 0. The big decimal dot 0 is a holder for an object of big decimal that already equals the value 0. So total will equal total plus the price of the item. So I can use the add method on big decimal, which will return the result of that addition as a new big decimal that then I can put back into total. And then I can print that. And there is our full two-string method for the purchase. We will loop through every book. We will add its description or its two-string method to result. We will then add up the prices as we go through and put them into total. And after we're done with the books, we will print a line at the bottom that says total, and then print the total amount that is owed for this purchase. So now that we have that object, let's create another class that will have just a main method that we can use to actually create books, make a new purchase, and move forward from there. So I'll create a new class. This one I'll call register, as if it's the cash register. I will click here that I want a public static void main method, and click finish. And so the first thing I want to do is create a couple books. I can then add these books to a new purchase. And finally, I can print the purchase out and see all of the books and the total that I owe. And let's run this and see what it does. So if I click on Bookstore, right click, I can do Run As Java Application. And here are my purchases. A book, Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, $7.99. Hamlet by William Shakespeare, $3.99. And the total, $11.98. And that's how we can build objects that use other objects.